What if one of the most influential military doctrines of the last 4 decades was quietly losing its relevance? What if the most important strategic shift in the Persian Gulf was not a spectacular battle, but the gradual disappearance of a threat that had shaped global energy markets, military planning, and international diplomacy for generations? If you only follow headlines, you might think modern conflicts are decided by missiles, drones, or fighter aircraft. But history suggests something very different. Wars are often determined long before the first major battle begins, through logistics, industrial capacity, technological adaptation, and the ability to deny an opponent the tools needed to execute their strategy. For decades, one assumption influenced nearly every discussion surrounding the Strait of Hormuz. Military planners, energy analysts, shipping companies, and governments all understood that this narrow waterway represented one of the world's most critical economic choke points. Roughly a fifth of globally traded crude oil moves through this corridor, making its security a matter of international concern. Rather than matching larger naval power ship for ship, Iran developed an asymmetric strategy designed to exploit the geography of the Gulf. Instead of seeking naval superiority, the objective was to create uncertainty. If commercial shipping could be disrupted even temporarily, the resulting shock to energy prices in global markets could generate strategic leverage far beyond the country's conventional military strength. This approach was never built around winning a traditional naval battle. It relied on making any attempt to secure the strait costly, time-consuming, and politically difficult. Naval mines, fast attack craft, coastal missile systems, drones, and layered surveillance networks all served as parts of a broader denial strategy. The effectiveness of such a doctrine did not necessarily depend on sinking large numbers of ships. Instead, its greatest strength lay in forcing opponents to assume the worst. Even the possibility of hidden hazards beneath the water could delay shipping, increase insurance costs, and complicate military operations. In modern conflict, perception can become almost as powerful as physical destruction. That logic shaped strategic thinking for decades. Discussions about the strait often focused on what might happen after maritime traffic had already been disrupted. Analysts debated how long mine clearing operations could take, how quickly international naval coalitions could restore safe passage, and what consequences prolonged uncertainty might have for global energy supplies. The underlying assumption was remarkably consistent. If enough obstacles were placed in the water, restoring confidence would require enormous effort. But recent developments have led many defense analysts to examine a different question altogether. Rather than concentrating solely on clearing hazards after they appear, what happens if the entire logistical chain responsible for creating those hazards is disrupted before it can be employed? That shift represents a fundamentally different way of thinking about deterrence and modern military operations. Military power is rarely defined only by the weapons stored inside warehouses. Every capability depends upon an interconnected system that includes manufacturing facilities, transportation networks, maintenance infrastructure, trained personnel, command structures, communications, and the platforms capable of delivering those weapons where they are intended to be used. Remove enough links from that chain, and even large stockpiles may lose much of their operational value. A weapon that cannot be transported, maintained, coordinated, or deployed contributes little to battlefield effectiveness. This principle extends far beyond naval warfare. Modern militaries increasingly target industrial infrastructure, logistics hubs, repair facilities, fuel depots, communications nodes, and transportation systems because these assets sustain combat power over time. Destroying a factory may influence future operations more than destroying equipment already deployed. Interrupting supply chains can prove more decisive than winning a single engagement. The contest shifts from attrition on the battlefield to competition between industrial ecosystems. From this perspective, the strategic significance of recent operations in and around the Gulf is not necessarily measured by the number of individual targets struck. The more important question is whether the supporting network behind a military doctrine can continue functioning under sustained pressure. Can damaged production facilities be repaired? Can specialized components be replaced under sanctions? Can experienced engineers, technicians, and operators be trained quickly enough to restore lost capacity? These questions often determine long-term military effectiveness far more than any single tactical encounter. Technology has also transformed this equation. Autonomous underwater vehicles, satellite surveillance, synthetic aperture radar, artificial intelligence assisted imagery analysis, long-endurance drones, and persistent maritime reconnaissance have dramatically expanded the ability to monitor critical waterways. Instead of reacting only after threats emerge, modern surveillance networks seek to identify preparation, movement, and logistical activity before operations even begin. While no detection system is perfect, the growing integration of sensors across multiple domains has significantly compressed the time available for covert military preparations. This evolution reflects a broader trend in 21st century warfare. Success increasingly belongs not simply to the side with the most advanced weapons, but to the side capable of connecting information, logistics, precision strike capabilities, and industrial resilience into a single integrated system. Data now moves almost as rapidly as missiles, allowing commanders to identify patterns, prioritize targets, and disrupt enemy operations before they fully develop. If that trend continues, it could reshape how future conflicts unfold. Instead of dramatic fleet engagements deciding the outcome, campaigns may increasingly focus on dismantling the infrastructure that allows those fleets to operate in the first place. The battlefield expands beyond ships and aircraft to include ports, supply chains, production facilities, transportation corridors, communications networks, and the industrial foundations that sustain military power. In many ways, the decisive contest begins long before the first missile is launched, and perhaps that is the most important lesson emerging from today's strategic environment. The greatest change may not be the destruction of a particular weapon system, but the gradual erosion of the assumptions that once gave that weapon its strategic value. When a doctrine depends upon uninterrupted logistics, specialized industry, and reliable deployment mechanisms, weakening those foundations can alter the balance of power without ever requiring a decisive naval battle. The real story, therefore, is not simply about what happened in the Gulf. It is about how modern warfare is increasingly becoming a competition to disable an opponent's ability to generate military power before that power can ever be brought to bear. If the battlefield is shifting from destroying weapons to disrupting the systems that sustain them, then the consequences extend far beyond military operations. They reach into global finance, energy markets, insurance industries, and international diplomacy. The Strait of Hormuz has always been more than a narrow stretch of water. It is one of the world's most important economic arteries, connecting producers and consumers across multiple continents. For decades, even the possibility of disruption has influenced oil prices, shipping costs, and government planning. In many respects, uncertainty itself became a strategic asset. That is why modern military planners increasingly distinguish between denying access and denying confidence. Closing a shipping lane outright is extraordinarily difficult, particularly when multiple naval powers are committed to keeping it open. Creating enough uncertainty to discourage commercial traffic, however, can be far more achievable. Insurance premiums rise. Shipping companies reroute vessels. Freight costs increase. Energy markets respond to perceived risk long before physical shortages appear. Sometimes the economic effects of uncertainty exceed the direct military effects of the weapons themselves. Yet uncertainty is not permanent. It depends on credibility. Every deterrent strategy rests on an assumption that an opponent possesses both the capability and the capacity to carry out its threat. If either element begins to erode, the psychological influence of that strategy can weaken as well. This is why industrial resilience has become one of the defining characteristics of modern military competition. A nation is judged not only by what it can deploy today, but by what it can sustain, repair, replace, and expand over the months and years that follow. Rebuilding sophisticated military capabilities is rarely as simple as replacing damaged equipment. Advanced manufacturing depends on precision machinery, specialized materials, experienced engineers, secure supply chains, and stable access to technology. Under conditions of economic pressure, sanctions, or export restrictions, restoring those capabilities may require years rather than months. Industrial capacity cannot always be accelerated on demand. Factories can be rebuilt, but highly trained workforces and complex production ecosystems take much longer to recover. This reality extends beyond one country or one conflict. Across the world, governments are rediscovering lessons that many believed belonged to the 20th century. Ammunition production, shipbuilding, semiconductor manufacturing, fuel refining, rare earth processing, and logistics infrastructure have once again become matters of national security. The assumption that wars could be won primarily through superior technology is increasingly giving way to a broader understanding advanced technology is only as effective as the industrial base that supports it. The same transformation is reshaping unmanned warfare. Drones are often described as inexpensive alternatives to traditional weapons, but their long-term effectiveness depends on continuous production, reliable electronics, secure communications, trained operators, and uninterrupted logistics. A drone that costs only thousands of dollars may appear economically efficient, yet replacing large numbers of them during an extended conflict requires an industrial system capable of maintaining production despite disruption. The competition therefore shifts from counting individual drones to evaluating the resilience of the entire manufacturing network behind them. The growing importance of logistics also changes how proxy networks operate. Modern partners of allied groups depend upon transportation routes, financial support, communications, spare parts, technical expertise, and a steady flow of equipment. Interruptions to those networks may gradually reduce operational effectiveness even without major battlefield defeats. In this sense, logistics becomes a form of strategic gravity. When supply lines weaken, operational flexibility often declines with them. Perhaps the most significant consequences emerge not on the battlefield but around negotiating tables. Military capabilities shape diplomacy because they influence what governments believe is possible. Throughout history, perceived leverage has often mattered as much as actual force. If decision minus makers conclude that a particular threat has become less credible, or conversely, that new technologies have strengthened another form of deterrence, the balance of negotiations may gradually shift. These changes rarely happen overnight, and they are seldom announced with dramatic headlines. Instead, they accumulate through countless strategic calculations made behind closed doors. History repeatedly demonstrates that major geopolitical transformations often appear surprisingly quiet while they are unfolding. The introduction of aircraft carriers did not immediately render battleships obsolete. Precision-minus guided weapons did not replace traditional artillery overnight. Cyber operations did not eliminate conventional military power. Instead, each innovation gradually altered how conflicts were planned, fought, and understood. The evolution taking place today may represent another such transition, where logistics, industrial resilience, autonomous systems, and persistent surveillance become as strategically decisive as conventional firepower. None of this suggests that future conflicts will become simpler or less dangerous. On the contrary, the increasing integration of military, economic, technological, and industrial competition makes strategic planning more complex than ever before. Success may depend less on achieving a single dramatic victory and more on sustaining national capacity through prolonged periods of pressure. Nations that can adapt their industries, protect critical infrastructure, integrate emerging technologies, and maintain resilient supply chains may ultimately enjoy advantages that are impossible to measure through battlefield statistics alone. This is why the most important developments are not always the ones dominating daily headlines. Individual strikes, dramatic footage, and viral social media clips capture public attention, but they rarely reveal the deeper transformation taking place beneath the surface. The true indicators of long-term strategic change are often found in factories, ports, logistics centers, research laboratories, shipping networks, and industrial investment. These are the foundations upon which military power is built, sustained, and projected. So perhaps the central question is not whether one nation has won or another has lost. The more important question is whether the character of modern warfare is changing once again. If future conflicts are increasingly decided by industrial endurance, technological adaptation, and the ability to disrupt an opponent's capacity before combat reaches its peak, then many of the assumptions inherited from previous decades may no longer apply. Years from now, historians may debate the precise moment this transition began. They may disagree about specific operations, individual campaigns, or the effectiveness of particular weapons. But they may also conclude that the defining feature of this era was something much broader: the realization that the decisive battlefield was never confined to the front line. It stretched across factories, ports, transportation corridors, financial systems, energy infrastructure, and global supply chains. In the 21st century, military power is generated long before the first shot is fired into the side that can preserve that engine while disrupting its opponents may ultimately shape not only the outcome of wars but the balance of international power itself.